Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there. I'm Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 179 of the Cognitive Podcast. How nice to see you all. I can't see you, okay? How nice to yell into a microphone at you all. Anyway, nice to be here with you. As I record this, at least this first part, is at 1:32 p.m. on Monday, April 22nd, 2024. Yay! We're all here together. Let's roll right along, shall we? In the Warm Thanks department, well, on multiple counts, our own Steffi Jo, because she has come forward with a class she's calling Afterthought Everything. As I understand this, she's starting with a sock tube and talking about how you add to it. And beyond that, I'm going to let her say what she's doing. And if you want to see details on this, you can go look at our information thread on the Cognitive Fiber Retreat. If you go in the show notes right under the Warm Thanks, you will see in bright red, Cognitive Fiber Retreat 10, 2024. All info is right here. That will take you to the thread I'm talking about. It's our mutual info thread on Ravelry. Anything you want to know or ask about, just keep posting it there, kids. So Steffi Jo offered to teach the Afterthought Everything class, which I may be confused. I think she was going to teach it last year and stuff happened. I don't even remember. But let me explain to you that if you get a class from Steffi Jo, you're doing great. I really like this because I think it fits in well with the classes that Jasmine and our own Emily are teaching. So we got a full load of classes here. We got 3 good classes here, and it's very, very exciting. I also want to thank Steffi Jo, apart from stepping forward to teach for us. I want to thank her for a lovely, generous mug of coffee. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's very, very kind of you because you are one of the people who gives back so much to the podcast. So it's nice that you're giving me a cup of coffee because you're doing just great. Believe me. Thank you very much. Maybe I can stop saying Meanwhile, our own Chris that is Cutiful Christina, said, should you be getting a SodaStream machine? I am seriously thinking of it, Chris. Thank you for that. Yes, I have really gotten to enjoy just fizzy water. And fizzy water with a flavoring in it like lemon juice or orange juice that won't up the sugar particularly. Yes, we are thinking of the SodaStream because much as I love the Trader Joe water that has no carbs and yet somehow manages to have flavor, I can't figure out how they're doing that. I do worry about that, and I do not like the fact it's coming in plastic bottles. Bad, bad, bad for the environment. And then there's our Cricket who says, I'm just going to read it out because I thought it was great. I'm in Australia, where fresh pumpkin is available all year round. Lucky you. Let me tell you, for some reason in North America, you probably can get it in a state like California, where I am. But actually, though, it seems to land mostly in the autumn here for us. So around August, September, October, and Americans see it as something you're going to use in recipes on Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas. But she says, so I'm wondering why all American recipes seem to specify canned pumpkin. I think I just told you. Making your own puree of pumpkin is really easy. Gotta tell you, Cricket, my husband agrees with you. He always makes it fresh every year. Cut and peel the pumpkin, cook until soft, and mash it. If it's more than you need, and it often is with us, you could freeze it. But it's also easy to judge how much you'll need as you prep. I generally put it in a bit of water and simmer around 15 minutes. Give it a poke, you'll know when it's soft. It's also great just cut, drizzled with olive oil, and baked or roasted, and could also be microwaved. Yes, 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 yes. And don't forget the seeds. Take the seeds out of the pumpkin, let them dry in the sun, and then roast them slow in your oven, and they're nice to eat too. So thank you for that, Cricket. Yes, I'm a big pumpkin fan, but it is hard to get it. I don't know why. We just seem to stop selling it in stores most of the year. I have no idea why, because certainly if you're getting that year-round in Australia, I don't see why we're not getting it year-round in here, because we have most of the same climates that you guys have in Australia, I believe. So I'm not sure why that's happening. Meanwhile, CFR10, I just said it and I'll say it again. There is a link right at the top of the show notes. I'll come back and talk about it again in the calendar. But the nice news, we have 3 great classes for CFR10, and we have 3 great vendors for CFR10. So all we're going to need is you. Ah, yes, Gemma, but what's on your hooks and needles, you say? Well, first, yay, I finished the green scrappy wristers. These are from Sock Yarn Scraps. They look a little chewed up. They just don't take a good photo, is what I've decided. They're absolutely beautiful. They're 3 different colors of greens. And this is a wristers pattern from Lion Brand Yarns. This takes a little time because you're using a tiny hook and you're going in the front and back loops at different times. So it's a little hard on the eyes, I must admit. It does make a very satisfying wrister. I am, of course, looking at other wrister patterns online. It's hard to find a lot of them in sock weight. Strange but true. Now, I will tell you, I mostly knit my wristers. I just knit the leg of a sock. And yeah, when I get to a place where I think a thumb should be, I just leave a hole, you know, knit side to side, whatever. And then I come back and rejoin and knit all the way around. And then I go back and I will crochet on a thumb because I'm not proud. I don't like just holes where the thumb should be. I think you really should crochet an actual thumb for your thumb. Hey, we're all opposable thumb animals. Let's celebrate it by better knitting and crocheting, shall we? But anyway, I think this could be done a lot more easily. I found a great pattern. I'll let you know how it works. It's for sport weight, but it's on the same size hook, which I think is interesting. An F as in Frank hook. And they're doing alternating single crochet, double crochet, and then reverse on the row above. So I think that's worth giving a shot at, and I'm going to try it with sock yarn because it's got to be a little easier than, you know, trying to squint and see the front and back loop. Now look, I have reading glasses, guys. It's not like I have to squint, but it is a little harder to do it. This is very fine work, and, you know, it's true. I did these in a wool, a single ply Madeline Tosh wool, I believe, and it was a lot easier than these. These were multi-ply yarns. Oh, it got really splitty. But those are done, and they're very happy, and I'm enjoying them. It's always good to have a few extra pairs of these fingerless mitts around the place. I stick them in a bin that we have by our front door, so anybody going out the front door can get some fingerless mitts and hats, because that's just the easiest way to do it. Meanwhile, in progress, nothing on the 5th CFR23 sock yarn cowl. It's stalled at about 6 out of 8 inches. It's beautiful. These things are. And meanwhile, I'm still messing with the crochet blocks. So as I told you last week, I was doing the classic Granny Square body bag right off Ravelry. This takes 4 6-inch squares in crochet. In other words, this is mindlessly easy to make. Now, in the crochet block experiments, I have been dedicated to the idea I'm not working hard on these things. These are just a side thing. So every day I do a block or two and then I don't worry about where that's going. So this one, I looked at these blocks and said, I really don't know what to do with them. So thought, you know, there's that person. I think I've said this story before. So last week, one night I got the wind up and I did the rows of single crochet at the top to make the bag have room to insert a zipper or some kind of magnetic closure. And this weekend I said, you know what? I want to line this. And you know what? A fat quarter. I have a whole collection of fat quarters I got at Joann's when they were on sale. Because I do that. If I'm in Joann's, it's a great impulse buy because you'll always find a way to use these. Sure in Bigora, that's what happened here. So you can see I took a fat quarter and I just cut it to the same dimensions. That is 18 inches across the top and 6 inches from top to bottom. And then you can see you fold those 2 side squares. And so I did the same with the fabric, figured out how to cut it. So there you can see my next bag with its liner. So what happens next to this? Why, I sew the liner up, of course. That'll be an easy 5 minutes either by hand or in my trusty white sewing machine. Probably 30 seconds in my trusty white sewing machine. So I think we can all see how this is going to go. The next step after that, I will probably work at pinning the liner in and then working on the zipper, putting the zipper in the bag. I still have not done the strap of the bag, which I'm looking forward to doing. The lady who made my bag, whose name I just can't remember, she did a stitch. I'm still trying to figure out how she did that bag handle, because she did a really tight stitch and it looks great. So I'm thinking about just doing that. And I am waiting because I'm expecting on Thursday I should receive the hardware for this bag. Very cheap on Amazon, let me tell you. Get enough for 10 bags like this for, I can't remember if it was $7 or $11, but really good buy. So again, this all goes into the big sewing box where I keep these spare supplies, because I have a feeling I'm going to make quite a few of these purses. These are just great. Now, one of the things I do need to do is I need to just make a template for that liner, because I feel like I'm going to make a few of these. And it's just an easy thing to do. I just need to maybe go to Joann's next time and buy some template plastic and cut it to fit that, or I may even have some lying here on the desk of doom, we'll see. So that's very nice. And like I said, this is a no-rush project. This is, every time I look at it on the weekend, go, what's one more step I could do on that? And that's it. I refuse to get too excited about this or to work hard on it. Meanwhile, there is the Lakeside cardigan, which kind of is and isn't. And I decided this weekend that I would start looking at how to assemble it. Now, I've got, right now as I speak, about 27 blocks for it, and I'm guessing I need about 64 minimum. And so I happened to say on one of my social media, you know, I'm just going to adjust this to my size. And of course, good old Pearl Happy pops in and says, well, how? I mean, could you talk about that? Thank you, Pearl Happy. Thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing that up. You know, this is mindlessly easy. Now, the first thing you can do is you can just go get a pattern. This is the Lakeside cardigan. If you pay for it, I think it's $6. They have templates for this, and it's just different sizes and how many blocks, and they show you a diagram. And I looked at it and said, unfortunately, I'm too big for their extra small. On the medium large, they're extra small size, it's all one. The medium large, it looks a little big for me, but it's a good starting point to see how you assemble this. By the way, I owe this to our own Amy Zula, who used to be Mimi's Knitting Basket, because I saw a picture she put up on Instagram of one of these laid out for herself, where she just laid all the blocks out to make a cardie. And that's what kicked me off on this, by the way. So thank you, Amy. Meanwhile, back at this podcast. So I looked at the model for the medium to large and said, yeah, it's going to be a little big, but I'm a little too big for the extra small size. So, you know, okay, measure yourself, right? That's the first thing. Now, I am 65 inches tall, and you all will know the Leonardo da Vinci drawing of the man with dimensions around him. He's got a circle and a triangle and all that, and he's fitted into it. If you know that from fingertip to fingertip, if you raise your arms level with your shoulders and stretch out your hands from fingertip to fingertip, you are the same dimension as you are from the ground to the top of your head. So that, for me, is 65 inches. And then I just measured from my wrist to my extended middle fingertip. That is 7 inches. So, okay, so I am 65 inches minus 7 for each hand to get wrist to wrist. So, you know, 65 minus 14, so I am 51 inches. Now, these are 6-inch squares. So 51 inches is between 8 and 9 squares. So I said, okay, 9. That's going to work for me. So I'll get a 54-inch wide strip, and that's what I did. And so I took 9 blocks, which is the 54 inches, and I just seamed them together. I'm so glad I did this. I got a really good lesson in seaming these blocks just by experimentation. First seam, not so good. I may pull it back because I really figured out what I was doing after the second seam of the 8. And I said, I'm just doing 1 strip today. I want to do this. I want to learn the lessons you learned from just carefully, slowly doing this. So I have 1 strip finished. It's quite beautiful. You can see me posing with it in the pictures in the show notes. And so that is 1 strip. Now, if I look at the diagram in the Lakeside cardigan, this is going to go across the back of my shoulders from wrist to wrist. Okay, this is not on the front of me, even though I'm taking pictures like that, and it's not wrapping around my neck the way it looks in the first picture there. It is going to be in a straight line from wrist to wrist. And that's what matters. So, you know, the obvious thing here, I'm going to do 2 of these because that's the back of this sweater. It takes 2. And I'm going to do 2 of these, so probably next weekend, or maybe Thursday morning if I have the time, I am going to do the next one. And then I'm going to seam them together on their long edge, which will be another great lesson in seaming. Just this is like slow work. And that's all I want it to be. Like I said, I'm not using any of these block patterns to eat up my time or to obsess over. I save that for my knitting. So when I get these 2 rows completed and seamed together on their long sides, I'm going to lay it on the floor and I'm going to lie on it. Because the next question is, how many blocks wide is my neck? And in the pattern, it's 2 blocks. No, that's way too big. But my neck looks like it's about maybe 7 inches from side to side. So the question is, do I want an even number of blocks, which would make it easier? And then when I sew the pieces that go down the front and down the back, that's easy. I just sew them with the seams lined up at the edges of the 2 central blocks of this back piece. But no, because it'll be unbalanced if I do that with only 9 blocks. So this is me determining, do I want 10 blocks with a very oversized wrist? I don't think I do. And the great thing is I can always add blocks at the end if I need to. It's only hand seaming. It's not hard to do. So, the first step, though, is to figure out how wide do I want the back from wrist to wrist. And then the next step is, how thick are my arms? How many blocks is it going to take to wrap around my arms? It looks like 3. Now my arms, again, they're like 13 inches at their widest part, I think. So, this is going to be floppy. And I'm not tailoring this. I'm not trying to make the sleeves fit it. I want this to be oversized and drapey. So again, you can see what I'm doing, 1 piece at a time. And if you look at the diagrams in the Lakeside cardigan, you're going to see you pick the one closest to you, and then you start seaming by hand as you go. And you start laying it out on the floor and measuring it and laying yourself out on the floor next to it. Remember, this is acrylic. It's not going to spring back the way wool would. So when I lie on it, if it's a little oversized, it's going to stretch more and more. It's not going to bounce back the way wool would. If you're using alpaca, I'd say the same thing to you. So you need to think about your material and the kind of stretch you get. How do I know this, by the way? Because I've made now 2 acrylic cardigans. Guess what they're doing? Stretching the living bejeebers out of themselves. So you need to think about that. You use your own experience. So again, this is a project where I looked at the biggest piece, that is the 2 strips across the back. You join them and you make them the proper length wrist to wrist. And then you work on how long do I want the fronts, how wide do I want the neck section. And again, you have to remember you're working in units of 6 inches. So, if I go for 2 blocks for the width of the neck, and again, the front pieces are going to hang down from these back pieces, from these big back pieces. So if I go for 2 blocks wide, I'm going to have a huge neckline. However, the other option is I can go in there and put an edging on it, like I can do a shawl collar, I can do, as I did on the last cardigan, I can do really nice ribbing, or I can just work simple edging. So you need to think about what dimensions you want on your sweater and what kind of edgings, what kind of finishing you're looking at. I can tell you now, if you look at the edges of this, in the picture where I'm wearing it draped around my neck, those are pretty good sewing jobs. I'm looking at one block where I said, yeah, I could have sewn a little closer to the edge than I did. But that's all easily fixed with 1 or 2 stitches. This is not something I'm worrying about. I just want to see them connected securely. And when you look at that, you can see right away I'm going to have to do an edging on that inner edge that goes up from, my hips around my neck and down the other side. There's going to be some kind of edging, even if it's just a single crochet row or 2. The question is what kind of edging I want. I can guarantee you it's going to be either ribbing or single crochet. The other thing is, do not be afraid of the big, bad ribbing in crochet. Knitters usually don't like crocheted ribbing. They feel like it doesn't work the same as knitted ribbing. Yes, it does, but you have to give it that chance. And so I like mine very tight, which is usually single crochet rib through the back loop on both directions. And if you make it tight, believe me, it functions like the ribbing in knitting, even though it seems kind of 90 degrees around to normal ribbing when you're a knitter. But it's a very useful trick to have, as I learned on my last crocheted cardigan, the hex, the love hex. I do recommend you do these simple cardis if you want to learn to crochet this way. And if you want to learn to use blocks, these are amazing tools to learn how to crochet. And you're going to get a great cardigan, and it's just so simple. It's painful. So I hope that helps, Pearl Happy. You're certainly going to hear more of this. Lydia's Pink Socks. I am on the second sock, and I have now finished the ribbing. So I'm working my way down the legs. Still in love with that sock. Vestiary 24, no work. Nothing much in the wonderful Dizzy Blondes. No more spinning right now. So yeah, I will be because summer is coming. Don't worry. But strategy. Okay, one last shot at overthinking. Well, is strategy. Is everybody tired of overthinking? And yet here I am again. I was trying to think about overthinking, which Sal Pal quite liked it when I said overthinking about overthinking, and I probably am. But the real joy of doing what I do is I've learned to look at an issue and try to step backwards and look at it from every different angle. And I was thinking about, why do I overthink? Because everybody does. And I realized a lot of times I'm overthinking because it's a way of trying to take control of a problem. So here I am at 63, and what am I currently overthinking about? Well, at night in bed, I think about what it's like to grow old and die. I wonder where I'll be in 10 years. And I can think of older friends of mine who have described the same thing to me. I think that is a phase of life, to be honest, that you have to come to grips with your mortality sooner or later. And I thought, well, I also overthink about my diabetes because I'm so out of control of it that, like, I thought I was doing everything right and my body did not agree. Now, of course, what I'm doing about that, and I'm sorry to keep droning on and on. Thank you for your patience. But what I'm doing about it is stepping back, going back to zero, and starting over. What do you do for high sugar? And this is an example. Please use your own example here. And of course, this made me think about overthinking and realize these two things made me realize that overthinking is often about lack of control or impulsivity. A sense that you've got to do something, you've got to do it fast, you don't know what to do, but you're willing to do anything, and that's impulsivity. So rather strangely, I started overthinking about what I don't overthink about. And I realized what I don't overthink about are the things I carry from day to day in my planning PDF from, in this case, the Hero's Journal. You don't overthink when you believe you have control of an issue. That is, when you believe you can make a plan, when you believe you can keep track, and when you are looking at a realistic tracking system and thinking, okay, I've got balance here. Like on my Hero's Journal today, I probably have about 30 things. And of them, I did the ones that I prioritized, seeing my patients, writing my notes, prepping for tomorrow, texting my patients tomorrow, and catching up all my bookkeeping, and of course all the meetings on my schedule with patients and with the boss today, which is great. And when you have those things taken care of, you notice you're not overthinking them. That, in other words, knowing I had my annual evaluation coming up today, I did not overthink it. Why? Because I have control of it. I feel very good about the way I perform on the job. I should. I mean, at this point in my life, if I'm not good at what I do, I'm hopeless. So I'm pretty good at what I do, relatively speaking. I do what I need to do. My work is in and complete. My patients are happy, etc. Okay, so I don't need to overthink a meeting with the boss. And I have prepared for the meeting. I'm uniformly pleasant to the boss. I really quite respect him. This is not the owner who I just admire the heck out of, who used to be the boss. But anyway, the clinical director. I really like this guy. I kind of respect him a lot. We have a very different approach to things, but he's quite good. Even if we don't do things the same way, I really respect what he does. And so I feel good there. The HR person is coming. I work hard to be kind and polite to HR. So there's nothing to fear there. So I just walk into the meeting. I can remember when these meetings used to scare the mud out of me. In case you didn't realize it, this is meant to give you hope. Someday, you'll feel this way about your career, I hope, or your professional life. The important thing, though, is when I've covered every base, my work is caught up. I get along with both these people, the HR chief and the clinical lead. I've covered every base. There's no reason to overthink it. In fact, I didn't waste 5 minutes on this topic last night when I was trying to fall asleep, which is when I usually choose to do my overthinking that's really going to torture me. Painful memories I can't change, all that stuff. And that's part of the secret. I can't change painful memories. I can't solve that problem. I can't take control. I overthink. Things that are very important in my life that I am in control of, I do not overthink. So what I want you to get is you're overthinking because you feel out of control of an issue. And you're also going to be prone to be impulsive about that issue. So I keep coming back to this idea that there is time management here, that it probably is worth your while to have a to-do or a could-do list. Now, ideally, you have it written down, because when you go to it every day and you put a line through things, that feels great. That is a reward in itself. You notice the reward, you feel the satisfaction. If you're keeping the list in your head, I promise you, you won't get as much satisfaction, even though you may achieve as much. Why? Because humans like recording things. Why do you think we learned to write? We like keeping records. We like ticking boxes. We like checking things off. So at the end of the day, you're overthinking about the things that you feel out of control about. So here's how this translates. In my life, I have my family, my farm with the animals, and my job. Okay. So in the morning, the first thing of the day in all those things is to get everybody fed. And I don't think about it because I know the boys feed the animals in the morning. When I get up, I check all the water bowls. That's my thing. Okay, so that's cared for. So the farm is now cared for the next 8 hours. The next thing is my son and my husband go off to school. And I know my husband's a good driver and taking care of all this. So I don't worry about that. I like my kids' school. Why? We've already done all that working and planning. We know the school people. We like his teachers. We like everything he's got there. So again, I don't overthink that. When I'm working, I have a policy and I train people this way. You don't overthink your patients. When your patient finishes with you for the hour, whether you hang up on them or they walk out of your office, you must feel that it is managed. The patient is as safe and supported as you can make them reasonably. That means you're being honest and transparent with them. You're telling them what you expect. They're telling you what they need. And at the end of that, you don't let a patient leave until you're reaching that moment. And now they're done. Okay, so then after school today, my boys are at my son's calculus class, and then he's going to go run a little bit on the track team. Again, I trust my husband. That's being cared for. I know exactly where they are. I can call them at any time. There's no reason to think about this. It's all good. So I have my errands. I crochet a block for my latest cardigan. I do all those little want-to-do things. I may sew together some blocks. I may work on the Lydia sock, whatever. I don't have to overthink them. They're on my to-do list and my can-do list. So when I have a few spare minutes, I just jump in and do that. And food, not an issue because I'm working on weight loss. I have my meals very planned in advance. So you notice what's happening. I'm using me as an example, and I hope you forgive that. I hope you don't see that as unpardonable ego. But I live what I teach, so, this is how I am stopping myself from overthinking. Things are under control. I know what I can do in any spare minute of time, including just put my feet up and take a break. I do that during the day sometimes. Now, this is all a tribute to nice planning. I know where everything is. I've worked it out with all the major people in my life. I know what's supposed to be happening all day long. The other thing this does is this avoids impulsivity. I don't panic. I don't have to panic. I know where things are. I feel comfortably in an appropriate level of control. Now, as I sit here, and now it's 7:34 p.m. on April 22nd, as I sit here, I'm not sure exactly where my husband and my son are. I have a rough idea, but that's good enough. Now, if anybody called me and said there was an emergency, that would be scary. But again, I carry my medical insurance cards, so do they. Like, even the emergencies are as planned out as they can be planned. So this is how you handle it. This is where you're going to get your balance. This is where you're going to avoid the overthinking. that what you can plan, you have planned. And some of those plans are very long distance, like buying car insurance several months ago when it renewed. And so knowing I have that paid for, my health insurance is a part of my pension, that is paid for. I have even the long-term stuff as managed as I can. And that's a good go. Okay, I have a lot of foods set up for me to eat keto and to do intermittent fasting this week. So that's good for me. I'm also monitoring my blood sugar, and I just got supplies for that. That's good for me. So you're planning everything you can. Where you're going to get in trouble is impulsivity. When I say, oh, I could eat a little more, or I could have that little bit of cake. I don't usually do that. I have to admit, I'm pretty good on the sugar, but I was making some mistakes. Okay, but again, that's planning. I go back and look at my scheme and say, this is what I'm not following anymore, because I got impulsive, because I just wanted to do this one little thing. The one little things add up. So the name of the game is you do not have to over-plan your life. I know I'm making it sound that way, but the reality is I don't have to over-plan my life, but I do understand all the various elements of my life, where they are, and what they're doing right now in a rough way. So even in an emergency, I know I have backup plans. I don't want to brag about that. Things can get pretty unfair pretty fast in the world. Life is not a fair thing. But I'm doing the best I can. So what I'm really describing here is the use of long-term and short-term planning. And that keeps me from being impulsive. That stops me, I know everybody's laughing, that stops me from starting too many projects in knitting. No, it doesn't, but it helps. It does limit it. But in my real life, apart from my hobby life, my craft life, I avoid impulsivity. I avoid a lot of panic. I avoid a lot of drama. I avoid a lot of emotional upset. That's impulsivity. That's reactivity emotionally. When I set up a good plan and I get it running, I handle that. And so what am I really talking about? Overthinking comes from a lack of balance. You're not thinking through stuff. However, overthinking also comes from those areas in your life where you can't control things. The hard part here is there will always be things you can't control. You know, I'm in my 60s, I'm taking care of myself as best I can, but there are health risks just because I'm in my 60s, ergo diabetes, okay? So you can't control everything. You can't always balance things, and that is where you're going to do most of your overthinking. This is important because you still can work towards this. For example, there are things I can sort of control, diabetes and my health. So yes, I'm committed to biking 30 minutes a day. Yes, I'm monitoring my blood sugar, whether I'm in ketosis. I am checking all that. That still isn't a perfect plan. I'm eating right. I'm taking the additives. I'm, taking metformin, that sort of thing. That is not a perfect plan because there are just some things in the human body we can't predict. So I'm doing my best. But there is a moment, and the Worry Workbook is related to this. In the Worry Workbook, you do this. You write down all the steps you're taking, and then you say, I am doing everything I can reasonably do. But life does have things that are unreasonable, and we all live with that. And part of living with that is controlling where you can control and radical acceptance. There are things I can't control. Now, there is still overthinking when I'm in bed late at night. My mind often will drift along and tell itself stories, but sometimes my mind digs up really painful memories that just sort of shock me that I'm even bothering with them. And so I listen to novels on Audible. And whenever I find my mind going there, I reconnect to the narrative. Right now, as you'll hear in Fluffy Books, I'm redoing the Beatrice Hyde Clare series. I'm calling the BH-C series. Okay, so you do have to hit those strategies for the overthinking about the stuff you can't control. This is very difficult. Little kids deal with this a lot because they have so little control. Older people deal with this a lot because as life progresses, you do become less powerful in several ways. You don't have the earning potential, for example. You don't necessarily have the health or strength. People don't want to employ you. Let me tell you, I'm so grateful for my job right now. So the idea here, if you're hearing growling, that's my stomach. Seriously, gut, stop it. Okay. But the idea is, yes, there will always be things you overthink. And it is a part of radical acceptance to understand that the brain constantly tries to solve problems, and if it can't solve them, sometimes it even makes them up, or it brings back a problem that is unsolvable, but the brain will just keep trying anyway, like a painful memory. You can't change the past. Okay, so overthinking is a normal part of human life. This is why we do things like planning, time management. This is why we seek balance. This is why we meditate, because we're controlling our own ability to stop painful thoughts. We have to do these things. And yes, meditating is a part of working against overthinking, as I have said so many times previously. When you meditate, you're making a plan to prevent overthinking. At the end of the day, the most common idea you hear as a therapist, or in my case, a psychologist, the most common thing is a patient telling you how they are not in control of their thoughts. In some cases, that's true. Psychosis, which is defined as a break with reality. No, you're not. You're not even in real time. And certain aspects of bipolar, because that's organic. So if you're manic, that is a chemical state. And if you have bipolar depression, that is a chemical state. It has to be chemically corrected. Now, there are moments, there are lower levels of it, minor depression, hypomania, which you may get away with without the meds. But the point is, there are organic problems that we do chemically correct. But most of the patients I'm working with, if they have those organic problems, they've already been corrected. That's how they get to see me. And now I'm helping them learn to live with it and to manage their behaviors with it. But most of my patients don't have organic things. They mostly come in, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. That's really about 85% of what I get. And this strategy is always the same. You have to take control of what goes on between your ears as best you can. And that's also true if you have organic illness, but you may need chemicals to do it. Okay? So at the end of the day, overthinking is about that. The core thing in overthinking is accepting that you have to manage what goes on in your head. There's nobody else who can really do it. If you need to take the meds, you take the meds. But if you are overthinking and the meds aren't going to make a difference, then you have to work on the hardcore skills like radical acceptance, making plans, and meditating. And that's overthinking. And it comes from, as you can tell, a kind of helplessness. And the way you overthink, to manage overthinking, is to work on planning and strategies. So I hope that makes sense. I really hope to high heaven I can't say a darn thing more about overthinking. I think we all must be tired of it by now. Good Lord. Yes, and that's 17 minutes of it. Oh, shoot. 320 miles since late November on my bike desk. That's really not a lot. I have to be honest. If you start doing the math there, but just sound impressed, okay? That's going really well. In fact, I'm actually about 10 days away from having to increase my distance or time, and I'm trying to think about what I want to do there. No ideas, but if you have any ideas, let me know. The fluffy books, well, I think I've already told you I'm rereading the Beatrice Hyde Clare series at night to help me not overthink. Haven't really been watching TV. Haven't really finished the Alexander the Great docudrama. This weekend, the boys and I went to see Dune Part 2, the movie. Very smart. Very smart. I do not like some of the changes this director made to the book. But I do understand what he's doing, I think. And it was very smart and very politically relevant. The original Dune by Frank Herbert is really a disguised story of the oil wars in the Middle East in the 1970s. Herbert, the writer, Frank Herbert, is a bit of a fascist, to put it mildly. But Herbert comes up with an interesting solution. And the solution is that somebody from the outside is going to come in and finally understand the Middle East. And when he does, the people of the Middle East will get behind him, recognizing him as their bridge to make the outside world respect and deal with them fairly. That's about the simplest I can boil it down to, but he does talk about the roles of power, sex, and religion, particularly religious fundamentalism, It's very interesting because by watching this movie, I actually learned things about Frank Herbert's book, which is pretty impressive. Now, the movie goes in a different direction. The movie basically says, okay, sure, so this guy comes in from the outside, Paul Atreides, and what does he have to do to get these people to follow him? And instead it switches to religious fanaticism, which frankly, I'd be a little insulted by that if I were the Fremen, or Fremen, as they call them, the residents of Dune, of Arrakis. And there are holes in the plot that are pretty large in places. There are not too many of them, but there's a few. But he's trying to talk more, I think, about what's going on in 21st century America. And he's definitely, he is the director here. He's weaving a very cautionary tale about religious fundamentalism in America. Now, if you're in another country, particularly Britain or Germany, and you're seeing that relating to your country, I'm sorry, because it did occur to me that there might be other countries this could relate to. But Dune has definitely been turned into a story here of the 2024 election and the dangers to American democracy based on America as an oligarchy versus America as a fundamentalist state, a religious fundamentalist state. It's a very smart movie. It's very intelligent. I got to tell you, the special effects, pretty wild. Very smart, very intelligent. I like and I hate what they do to Chani at the end, but she becomes the moral compass. I'm going to try not to do spoilers. I like and I hate what they do to Paul. It's just very smart. So I would say definitely 2 thumbs up for Dune Part 2. If you haven't seen Dune Part 1, you're going to need to see it. You need to understand the ending of Dune Part 1. And the ending of Dune Part 1, particularly what happens to Leto Atreides Sr., and the ending of Dune Part 2 with what Paul chooses to do, and also sexuality and religion, and sexuality in political marriages. That's all very big in both. And I really recommend you see it, but it isn't the novel. It's a very different critter. It's a very smart critter. However, Christopher Walken as the Emperor, that is like watching the Emperor play Christopher Walken, not the other way around. He's so distinctive, it may be a little too much, but he does a fabulous job. So Dune Part 2, I really liked it. Great special effects. Places in the plot lag. I think they spent too long on the Holy War at the end. But especially the end where all the religious fanatics jump on spaceships and go, yeah, let's go take over the Empire. Very different from the book. So you're on a different logic there, but it is very good. Something I really like. Well, of course, because I'm on my diabetes kick, I'm looking at the dieting apps again. And this week a patient recommended My Net Diary, all one word, it's an app, as an application for diets. It is very good. I did look at it. I prefer MyFitnessPal. What I would tell you is these are both great apps for tracking your eating and exercising. They both have recipes. They both have pretty much the same stuff. I have a formal 1-year membership to MyFitnessPal. I really like it. I used it 6 years ago. It's only gotten better. My Net Diary, very much the same. Some of the stuff, like the macros and stuff, are much easier to locate, much more on top. But so far, I haven't found anything in My Net Diary that is not in MyFitnessPal, and I'm used to that platform. I would say it's pay your money, take your choice. About the same thing. My Net Diary, bigger, flashier advertisements for their own recipes, which are great. MyFitnessPal, it's all in there, but you got to go digging a little more. This leads me to Bright Line Eating, which one of my other patients told me about. She believes in this. I think this is a great plan. If you go to Bright Line Eating, there's probably brightlineeating.com. Just Google it. And it's exactly what you think. It is a diet with rules that are called the lines. And the woman who originated it, she is a psychologist who deals in the psychology of eating. I started getting her newsletter. I really quite like it. I think it's very smart. Now, I'm diabetic. Do I think I'm going to adhere to this as a diabetic? Actually, I am. To be honest, here are her rules. She says there are 4 lines that she never crosses when she eats. She calls these the bright lines. Number 1, don't eat sugar, period. Number 2, don't eat flour, period. Number 3, do not eat food between your 3 meals a day. I really like this one because that was a myth that was propagated about 15 years ago, and we really need to get away from it, that you need snacks. No, you don't. That's been shown over and over again that that was a mistake. So she says, no snacks, no food between meals. Number 4, and this is the last one, weigh your food. That is, know how much of everything you're eating. Now, if you're using something like MyFitnessPal or MyNet Diary, that's part of it. They ask you precise amounts. I like MyFitnessPal because it's very easy to enter your recipes and divide it into servings and then say, I've given myself this much of a serving. This has worked really well for me. Now, if you look at Bright Line Eating, she does not advocate keto. She does not advocate plant-based, meat-based, nothing. But she's very clear, no sugar and no flour. And I have to tell you, when I went keto, my first rule, before I became keto, I was not, but I said, no sugar, no flour, no rice, no potatoes. I think it's worth considering no rice and no potatoes because when I went no sugar and no flour, I immediately compensated with a lot of sushi rice. So I would say no sugar, flour, rice, or potatoes. But I really respect this. And I'm willing to say, if you're weighing your food and you're eating rice, you're eating potatoes, that may compensate. I think what you need to realize is carbohydrate makes you crave carbohydrate. Everybody knows this. It's not denied. So from there, you got to do your best. But I like Bright Line Eating. I think if you're doing these 4 rules, odds are high you're going to do pretty well. And when it says weigh your food, then the question becomes, yeah, but how much? And that's where these things differ. How much is okay in keto? How much is okay in the American Diabetic Association diet? How much is okay in whatever, I don't know, Mediterranean diet? So there are going to be differences here. The woman who advocates this, and no, I don't remember her name, and I should. She's a very gifted colleague. She has had great success with the Bright Line plan. There are a lot of advocates all over the world for it. It does very, very well. What I would say to you is, if you're following the 4 bright lines, and they are in the show notes if you want to see them, you're probably going to do pretty well. The trick is going to be the last one, weigh your food. How much is enough? And what do you do about portion sizes? But I have to say, I think the 4 bright lines are a pretty good start. This, of course, leads me to put a lid on it. And I just put in my recipe for keto blue cheese dressing. This is pretty fast and loose. Basically, it's 4 ingredients. Full fat sour cream, full fat Greek yogurt, crumbled blue cheese, and heavy whipping cream. And I know that's going to sound weird when I say, and the cream is to thin this. Really, you do this to taste. Because blue cheese gives a lot of strength of flavor. What you'll notice is this is pretty low carb. There will be a few carbs in the Greek yogurt and the sour cream. That's about it. Some in the heavy cream, but this stuff comes out low. Remember, you're using a tablespoon of this at a time on your salad. This is a nice way to lose weight. Most salad dressings have something in them as sweetener, ketchup, sugar, you name it. If you buy a commercial, it's got hydrogenated oils or an oil you don't want to eat like safflower or canola. So this is pretty pure, and you have to decide like how you want to doctor it. I'm not going to give you amounts. I really go heavy on the blue cheese crumbles because I'm there for the blue cheese flavor to liven up the salad. I go heavier on the sour cream than I do on the yogurt because Greek yogurt seems to drive my sugar up a bit. And the heavy cream to thin it out, that's really at taste. Some days I don't want it thin, some days I do. But that's my basic setup for a keto blue cheese dressing. There are recipes that substitute in milk to thin it out, more carbs to no purpose. I'd rather have the fat from the heavy cream. Proportions are always going to differ. So I really think this is one of those things, you get a big tub of sour cream, a big tub of Greek yogurt, a big pile of blue cheese crumbled up, and a pint of heavy cream. And you sit down and you just add and measure and taste. But I'm really very fond of this. I will just throw the sour cream in, add a little Greek yogurt till I like that base flavor. Then I throw in the blue cheese, and I put in a lot of blue cheese because I want a lot of that flavor. And then I will thin it with heavy cream as I think I need to. So on the blather, you've probably heard enough already. I've been plateaued. Last week I was eating, my sugar went up. So, I'm still testing my glucose. I stay in ketosis all the time, which is really nice. And that's because I really have adhered to the keto rule of 20 carbs or less. Well, that's 20 grams of carb or less in a day. And that's going to do it for you. But I did plateau, so I decided to shake up my eating a little bit. I still couldn't break out of the keto, which I'm really glad for. And in case you're wondering, my sugar still went into the high range, even on keto. So that's interesting and a little terrifying. So I'm looking at all the things like berberine and fish oil and all that. But all in all, things seem to be going pretty good. We are so close to the end of Project G that I really just need to get back to the garage and resettle some boxes. Project Cookbook, again, I take pictures all the time of keto recipes on the internet, and so I'm gradually transferring them to index cards to be in my kitchen. I will tell you, if you're hungry and you're keto, this is the secret. Get a lot of the snack recipes. Your best bet, get yourself a lot of parchment paper. You can put just about anything on parchment paper on a cookie sheet. Put anything else on top of it and melt it under a broiler, and you're going to get something. Cheese with a little bit of pesto and like shredded cheddar or shredded mozzarella with a little bit of pesto and maybe a little Parmesan or a broccoli stalk or whatever. You'd be amazed how fast you can make a keto snack. The other one, dill pickles. Don't forget them. They are your friends. Make sure there's no sugar in the ingredients or make them yourself. But you'll get something a little spicy with a little bit of kick. Don't panic. But I will tell you, the internet is loaded with really good keto snack recipes. You don't have to live with the old-fashioned fat balls, which were take a lump of almond butter and freeze it and then melt sugar-free chocolate over it. Oh, you can do so much more than that. Okay, the pup date. Dogs are doing great. Green fingers, well, wildflowers everywhere. But I was walking out the other day, saw this riot of pink down near the corner of the driveway, and realized that's got to be a cultivar. Went out, took a picture of it just to be sure, identified it. On my plant identifier, it's my dianthus. Woohoo! So now we know what's going to grow around the driveway. That was the whole point last year. What will grow here? What can I really count on? Still waiting to see if some of the others come back. I haven't really had a chance because we got weeds galore. I should say invasive species with wildflowers. Under all that, you can see a picture of the dianthus in the show notes under the Green Fingers report. The community resources, you can see the links to various resources I and other members of this group have assembled. Those links will take you over to the Ravelry group for this podcast, and there's a lot of good stuff there. On the calendar, of course, the usual suspects, all the groups that meet in Santa Clarita are there. And again, all these groups you find on Facebook, not on web pages. And then the stuff I really care a lot about, CFR 10, will be on Saturday, September 28th, 2024, at the Courtyard by Marriott in Valencia. And again, there's another link right there in the show notes that will take you to the information. Romule, I'm looking forward to December 21st to at least through December 29th. And I forgot to tell you, since I had my annual eval, yes, I have a pay raise coming. I'm very happy about that. And let's take it down to Minerva, who gets the last word. There's a lovely picture. I found out in the middle of last week, I don't know what the date was, somewhere in the teens of April, was Happy National Cat Lady Day. And so there I am with Minerva being a cat lady. When I realized it, I said, we got to take a selfie together. Minerva said, selfie yourself, human slave, and looked majestically out the window. But when I stuck my ear against her and cuddled her, she purred loudly. So yes, there is a picture of the purring Minerva celebrating National Cat Lady Day with me. So there we are, folks. There is another episode of your favorite podcast. Well, of cognitive. Thank you for coming along for the ride. Remember, we are a community. We are at our best when we're working together. We are at our safest. And our individual rights are preserved the most successfully when we work as a community. If you don't believe me, go watch the movie A Beautiful Mind. That's what he gets the Nobel Prize for proving in econ. I'm here to tell you it's true, and we got a Nobel Prize for that proof to go with it. So everybody, please stay safe. Take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.